All right, so we got our menus, our screen set up. We have our game screen, but right now we're not able to do anything with it. So the first thing that I'm going to show you guys is how we can kind of set up a physics engine. That's what Box2d is. So we need a couple things. I'm just going to mark this as Box2d, and we also need some way to view our world. So let's just call this view. Okay, so in Box2d we're going to need a world for us to play around in. So private world. We're going to need a body, and let's have a vector 2, and that's going to be our gravitational forces. Let's see, set everything that we need: a world, a body, a gravitational force, and okay, so then our view, we need a private orthographic camera. We need a way to actually see what we're looking at. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but I'm just kind of showing you so you can get a basic setup. So your Box2d world, you could use the camera to see it, to be able to see the outlines of the physics, because we don't have to actually see them to still have them work in our world. We need a Box2d debug renderer, and we're just going to call that B2DR. All right, and then we need to import those classes and the world. Okay, so when we start off, world equals new world, and we need to pass in a couple things. We need to pass in gravity and if we want it to sleep. So let's go ahead and create our gravitational forces. So gravitational forces, that's a vector 2. So equals new vector 2, and we want it to not move in the x direction. We do want it to move negative 9.8 meters in the y direction. Oops, F for float. Okay, and then we could just add our gravitational forces in there, and we don't want it to sleep, so I'm going to say false. If I do allow it to sleep, then when physics is not acting on it, so let's say that it interacted and it stopped moving, then it'll go to sleep to speed up computation. We need to do the B2DR equals new Box2d debug renderer, and our camera, we need to set that up. So camera, and I'm going to set it up where we're just looking at our full graphics, and then we can start. I'll show you guys how we can scale it. So camera equals new orthographic camera, and then we can set it to ortho. So we can say camera.set to ortho. So since we're using it, we want to lock it in so it's not trying to angle anywhere. Our first thing, we want y down. Well, we have y increasing up, so we want that as false. Our width, let's just go ahead and use the normal graphics. So gdx.graphics.getWidth and gdx.graphics.getHeight. Okay, so that would be the size that we're looking at with the camera. Now we need to position where the camera is in that viewport. So I'm going to go camera.position.set, and now I can say inside of that area what I'm actually looking at. So we already have a viewport assigned to the camera, so let's go with camera.viewport width divided by 2 because I want it in the middle, and camera.viewport height divided by 2, and this would center my camera right in the middle of the screen, and then I don't care about the z direction, so I'm just going to put 0. Okay, so now we have our world created. We have our Box2d debug renderer. We have our camera all set up. The only thing that we don't have is the body. So building a body that is a little bit more intensive, we're going to go ahead and create a method for it. So public, we want to return a body, and let's just call it create body. And for creating a body, well, we are going to need a position. So let me go ahead and say we want a vector 2. We're going to call that the position, and then let's just do a float for the size. Okay, so there's a couple things inside this method that we're going to need. We know that we're going to have to be dealing with the body. We need to create a physics body. We also are going to have a definition for what that body is. So body def, let's just call that bdef equals new body definition. And we know we're going to have a fixture definition, and I'll explain these as we're going through. Equals new fixture definition. Okay, so when we have a body, the first thing that we're going to do is we have to define what it is in the world. So bdef, we have a bunch of different types of methods of things that we can do. We know we're going to end up having to set the position. We know we're going to have to set the type. So let's look at the type. Type is equal to, and then I can type, so if I start typing dynamic, there is an enum in there, body def, or body type. Okay, there are 3 different types that we can use. We have dynamic, we have kinematic, and we have static. Dynamic is something that where the world is acting on it, it can interact with everything. I can move it around, I can apply forces. So this would be what we would use for like our player or our enemies. Okay, a kinematic body is something that forces can be applied to it, but gravity is not acting on it. So I could give it a force. So this could be like a platform where it's just rotating around, and gravity is not acting on it in any way. If the player is jumping on it, force is not being applied down on that body. If I have a static body would be used for like if we were doing your level borders, so like your walls, your platforms that are not moving, that don't have anything acting on them. So when we think of a physics engine, everything has forces. So a static body would make sure that that will always stay in that same position, even if the player is bumping into it. Okay, so for the first one, let's go ahead and just create a dynamic body. And we want to set that position. So for now, let's just go ahead and do .position .set. We just want to set it at the very top of our screen, right in the middle. So I'm going to go camera.viewport width, and I want it in the middle, so divided by 2, and camera.viewport height, and I want it right at the top. Okay. Now, so we have a body defined. We need to, this body has no mass. It's basically just a point that is dynamic, but I don't have anything attached to it. So that's where a fixture is. The fixture definition is what we can use to attach different shapes. So I could, if I'm thinking of a body as like an actual human body, the fixture definition would be like the head, the feet, the toes, the fingers, the arms. So that's what I want to do with my fixture definition. So I'm going to say fdef. Well, we want to do a shape. So let's create a shape. Let's just do a circle shape. Circle shape, and I'll just call that shape, is equal to new circle shape. And that circle shape, I'm going to need to have it have a size. So shape.set radius. Well, that's going to be my size, but divided by 2. So size divided by 2. Then, let's see, do we need anything else? Nope. So then we can go fdef.shape is equal to that shape that we just created. Okay. And then we can set the density of it. So density, because Box2d operates completely in MKS, so meters, kilometers, and seconds. So everything that we're creating, this is the real physics engine. So let's say that it has a density of 1. Then the bigger it is, the more that gravity and forces are going to be acting against it. So that doesn't mean that it's going to be moving faster. It all depends on the viewport of how we're looking at it. So after I have that density and I have that shape, we're going to want to create that fixture, and we're going to want to create that body. So I have this body definition. I need to actually create the body using that definition. So this body is equal to world. The world is creating the body, create body, and I'm using that body definition. Okay, so the world's created now. Now I have to attach, or the body's created now. Now I have to attach the fixture that I just created, that circle shape with the density of 1, to the body. So I'm going to go body dot create fixture, and then I'm going to use that fixture definition. So this fixture definition, you could use more than once. You could change the shape, you could change the density. There are other things in there. fdef dot restitution is how bouncy something is. So 0 would be no bounciness at all. So if it hits something, it's just going to completely stop. A 1 for restitution, now it's a float. So if it was 1, then it means it's a perfect restitution. So it will bounce as high as it fell, not losing any of the force. I can have friction set to it, so we know in real objects like ice is going to slide better on different surfaces. So if I had the ground that if I create ground, I could have it where that was, say, ice, or I could have it where it was like a sand, and apply some type of friction to it. The is sensor is so that I could create a Box2d body, and I could use that actually as almost like a platform button, or like a door, or something that I don't want to actually push my player around, but I want to use it to be able to do different things. So we don't really need to set anything for the restitution. Well, we could. Let's just go ahead and do it. Restitution, and we'll say that that is equal to 0.5f. fdef.isSensor, and we're going to say that's false. Okay, so we have created the body. We have now attached a fixture definition to it that has a shape, density, restitution, and a sensor. That is all that we need for this method. Now we just need to return that body. Okay, so in our main game screen, we created that world, we created the Box2d bug renderer and the camera, and we set it up. Now, let's say when we're showing the screen, we want to create that body. So now we can actually use that body that we did as the member variable for the class. Body equals create body, and let's give it a position. So let's say, oops, this would be in our create body. We want to be able to set that position. So we shouldn't lock it into that one position right there. Let's lock it into the position that we give. So position dot x and position dot y. Okay. So that's what we're passing in. So then if I'm creating the body, then I could create it with the width viewport width divided by 2 and camera dot viewport height. Okay. And then what else do we need? We need the size. So let's say that we have it a size of 10. Now with Box2d, ideally you want F. It's looking for, okay, hold on, new vector 2, and then I am putting that inside. This is camera dot, all right, there we go. Okay, so we now are creating that body, but still we're not really going to see anything. When we render, we already know that render happens many times. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to update the camera. Okay. The next thing that we want to do is we want to step our world. So we want our world to actually have time in it. So that's world.step, and then we're going to give it that change. So we could just use the delta. We could lock it into a certain amount of frames per second. If I wanted to do it a certain frames per second, I could do, say, 1/30f. That's 30 hertz, so that's going to step it 30 times every second. I could leave it as delta, so for now I'm just going to leave it as delta, and then we have our velocity iterations and our position iterations. So the best ones are usually just 6 and 2. You could play around with these. I have read lots and lots of documentation, and these just seem to be the best. So we're stepping our world now. Now we have time in our world so we can see things interact. Okay. The next thing that we need to do is we need to actually have our Box2d debug renderer actually draw out based on what the camera sees. So I'm going to say b2dr.render, and then I need to pass in, for what it's going to render, I want it to pass in the world, and I want it to pass in the camera, the matrix for the camera combined. So, and all that really is the camera dot combined. It's taking everything that it sees and it's calculating it based off of the view that it should see. So it's not doing anything outside of that area. We're not having interactions outside of that area that is trying to draw outside of what we're looking at. Okay, so we have that all created. Now with the dispose method, we need to see if there's anything that we need to dispose. Now we did create a shape, and then we applied that shape. I'm going to go ahead and dispose that automatically right here, shape.dispose, because we don't need it past creating the body. But in our dispose, when we close this out, we should be disposing other things. So we have the b2dr. Can we dispose that? Yes, we can. Can we dispose our world? Let's check. World.dispose. Yes, we can. Can we dispose the camera? Nope. So that's already controlled. So you want to check and make sure that you're disposing your stuff so you're not just holding on to unused things. All right, so we should be able to run this and see what we got. So let's go ahead and run it. Now, Box2d, we're going to use this in a lot of different ways. I'm just kind of showing you guys how it can be used, and then we will play around with it a little bit. So there's our main menu screen. There's the body. And it's moving down. It's really, really small right now. Why is it small though? Well, when I'm looking at my screen, I'm looking at it in terms of, let's look at the camera, the total graphics for that screen and the total, so the total width and total height. Well, I don't have to do that. I don't have to say, well, I'm dealing in pixels. I can look at it in terms of size. So when you're creating a game, everything, you can refer to it as potato units or banana units. They don't exist. They're in terms of how I want to see them. So my camera does not have to have a size like that. I can say, well, I want it to have a width of, let's say I'm using in meters. I want it to have a width of 16 meters by, let's say 10 meters. Okay, now my position, I'm still setting the camera in the middle of that position. My size that I passed in here, that's a size 10, so that should be pretty big in that world. The size is 10, so the radius is 5. So now when I run it, we should be able to see what we're looking at. There's that loading screen, main menu. Here's our game. See how big that was? Okay, and if you looked at it, it looked like it was actually moving faster. Now, we have, so that was pretty big. We can actually go ahead and shrink this down so it's in relation to that screen that we're looking at, and run it again. If you can stay away from thinking in terms of pixels and you think of what am I actually looking at for a camera, my size of my objects, if I can refer to them in terms of, meters, it would be a lot more beneficial to us. So there was that body, it moved down. We could create multiple bodies so we could see them actually running. Let's do, that was body 1. Let's go ahead and create another body, and we'll have them different sizes. Private body, body 2. Okay. And then we can reuse that method. So let's just copy that. Body 2. And we want this to be just a little bit to the right. So let's add 2 to that, because remember now our camera width is 16. So 16 divided by 2, that's 8. So now I'm at 10 and the other one is at 8. And let's make this one bigger. Let's make this 2. And we could slow down our gravity if we wanted. So let's have that as, let's say, only 1. So it's only acting at 1 meter per second down, 1 meter per second per second. So now we should have 2 bodies that are getting generated, and one is a little bit more to the right. And we should see the speed. So it's going to go a lot slower now so we can observe them. Alright. So now if they interact, so let's say that we create in here, we could change the gravity scale in here. That's another thing that we have in here. We got bdef dot gravity scale right here. We can change the gravity scale. We can change the angle for how it's acting. So let's say gravity scale equals, and let's just call it force. And then here we will put a float that we can pass in the force. So in the first one, if we wanted gravity to act more on it, let's say that this one has a force of 1 and the bigger body, we want it to act differently. Maybe it's going to have a little bit more force. Now if we run it again, we should see that gravity is actually working harder on that object. If there is a time where you're playing around with Box2d and you notice that either your bodies that you're creating are moving really, really slow or really, really fast, you need to check the size of stuff that you have. So the bigger body, I have gravity actually working harder on it. So it moved faster than the other one. So there's a lot of different ways that we could do this. We could actually go ahead and attach that. So our world now has a body element. We could attach sprites and set them so that they're getting drawn. Just like that image that we did, we can have that image position on top of that body. So then when the body moves, that image also moves to where we're getting drawn. So this is one way that we are going to be looking at on doing Box2d. When you're using Box2d, you have to have a world. You're going to end up having to create a body. You're going to have some type of gravitational force. For our 2D game, now since it's a top-down, we don't have any gravity on it. Okay. If we want to see it, so for debug purposes, we're going to want to use the Box2d debug renderer. And then if we don't want to see it anymore, all we do is need to just comment it out or no longer render it in the render step right here. The world is still moving in time, so it's still happening. We just maybe don't need to see it anymore. We can just see the effects of it. Okay, you have to have a camera if you want to see the debug renderer, and with the camera we can set what our viewport is. It is best if we are looking at it in terms of meters instead of pixels. We want to set that position of the camera in terms of what we are looking at, and then we can refer to that in units. So when we're creating and setting the positions, we don't have to, I could put this just at 8 plus 2, that would be 10. I can do that. I don't have to continue to refer to it as the camera viewport width. I can just actually call those numbers. So this can dynamically change in the render. I could create another world or another body, and we could go ahead and do that, and I could change it where this could be, say, a switch statement, so that it would be a dynamic body, or it would be a like a static body. So let's go ahead and put let's put body type, and I'm just going to call that type. And then I can put, let's say, a switch right here, switch that is taking that type, and it's going to assign it. So we have our case static body. So if I pass in static body, or I pass in case dynamic body, or I pass in case kinematic body, we can create those. So let's go ahead and move that where it should go now. Break. And so So we want, if we passed in for it to be a static body, we can make it do that, static body. And we could do that for kinematic body too. Okay, so now we have a method set up where we can pass in our create body method what type of body we want it to actually create. So here in that show, I now have to pass in that body type. So body type, I want this one to be dynamic. And on this one, I want this one to actually be a static body. So let's go ahead and make this a static body, body type. Let's find static body. Went too fast. Static body. All right, so if it's a static body, let's change the size of it then. We want that to be at 0. We want it to be at the very bottom so that the other one can hit, and we want it to be right in the middle. Okay. Our force, even though we have that, it's not going to be applying to it. So we have our static body. We have it now positioned at the bottom of the screen in the middle. And then this, our first body, is dynamic. It's going to fall down and hit our static body. Let's go ahead and see that run. All right, so there's our static body. It hit. That was the restitution of this body right here. And then it stopped. Now if I move it over a little bit, it's going to start rolling off. In the next video, we will be discussing how I can filter out certain things, so I don't have to have this automatically interact with this. I can have, say, the player is only interacting with certain elements, and enemies are only interacting with certain elements, and we can discuss that a little bit. All right. So in summary, we have created bodies. We have set up a method where we can create a certain type of body. We have to give it a position. We have to attach fixtures to it. And that is what we actually see, and then we render it on our screen. We can use this to help mold our world, our game world that we're creating, into what we need. All right.